President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are expected to emerge pretty soon from their meeting at the White House. Among the topics that were discussed was the plan for the second phase of the hostage and ceasefire deal that Israel and Hamas agreed to last month. Other expected discussion points include Iran's nuclear ambitions and normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia. Now, with Trump back in the White House, I can share from my meeting with the Prime Minister that optimism for managed peace in the Middle East has returned. Joining me now to talk about this and much more, U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Armed Services Committee. Coach Tuberville, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
You too, Tony.
So President Trump, his meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu is the first with a foreign leader since his second term in office. What do you think this communicates to Israelis and to the rest of the world?
Well, basically, at the end of the day, President Trump's trying to find out the game plan of Netanyahu and what the future holds for them, whether it's Lebanon or whether it's Gaza. He has to have the whole picture and just not part of it. And then, of course, President Trump's going to give his thoughts on the game plan and maybe give him his game plan of what he thinks the American people and President Trump and the White House should do for Israel. Israel's our greatest ally, Tony. We need to help them. But we need to have a game plan to get this thing over with, because it is a bomb that could go off any second. And to me, that's the most volatile area in the world. Now, we got Ukraine and Russia, we got China and all those things. But right now, the biggest threat to world peace is the Middle East. And President Trump has got a lot of great ideas about this. Pete Hegseth, he and I talked for hours about this. I think we got a good opportunity to help Israel, but we got to make sure we're all on the same page. And I think that's what Netanyahu and President Trump are doing.
Well, we'll soon find out when they emerge from their meeting. Today, the president withdrawing the United States from the United Nations Human Rights Council. Your reaction to that?
Well, it's run by dictators, and we don't deal with dictators. And President Trump's exactly right here. He's been putting all these things together for the last 2 or 3 years, and now they're all coming to fruition. I call it picking low-hanging fruit, and this is picking low-hanging fruit right here with the UN. The whole entity might need to go, but at the end of the day, he's going to start picking out the areas that really don't support the American people and things that we believe in. And he's starting with this group, and it could even go other places. But I'm glad President Trump's stepping up early in this 4 years and getting this done.
Are you concerned about the absence of a sane voice on the United Nations Human Rights Council with what they may do with that from a propaganda standpoint without the American representation on there?
Well, you can say that, and it would help to have somebody in the room, but they never listen to us. I mean, it's not our first rodeo. It's not President Trump's first rodeo on this situation. He understands the people that the voices are really heard propaganda-wise, no matter whether we're in the room or not. So hopefully they see the writing on the wall here, and they come to an agreement. Say, hey, if we're going to have any kind of help from the United States, we might ought to start listening to President Trump and the Americans. Because right now, we have really no voice. We might be there, but we really have no voice.
Now, speaking of presidential actions, President Trump also signed a memorandum that restores his maximum pressure campaign on Iran and aims to deny Iran all paths to nuclear weapons. Now, this is something you and I have talked about, that this is in stark contrast to what the Biden administration did. Do you think this will work?
I think it will. President Trump knows how to handle it. The number one thing for Iran is to cut off their money supply with oil, and that is what will eventually happen. That's what he did last time. President Trump had them almost broke, Tony. They were down to several $1 billion for the entire country. Their people were just about to start protesting and rioting in the streets against their own government. And then Joe Biden comes in. He lets them start selling oil all over the world, and it's made them rich again. They got hundreds of billions of dollars. They've helped all their proxies with the war in Lebanon and the Houthis, and of course in Gaza. It's a total mess again. President Trump's going to have to clean it up. It's great to have an adult back in the room with President Trump, because what has been running this country, especially foreign relation wise, is not been adults in the room. It has been people from some other planet, it seems like, that have made decisions that have not been for anybody, even the Middle East. So we got adults back in the room, and hopefully we get some answers and we start finding ways to get Israel out of this war in Gaza and get peace back in the Middle East.
Let's switch gears, Coach. I want to talk a little bit about domestic policy as it pertains to our nation's military. For the past 2 years, you've been sounding the alarm about the Pentagon's illegal and immoral practice of using taxpayer dollars to fund abortions. Now, frankly, you stood along with just a few other members of the Senate standing with you on this, but that has now paid off. It's been reversed. You mentioned Pete Hegseth. You had conversations with him about this as he was positioning, going through the process to become Secretary of Defense. What can you tell us about those conversations that led to this decision that's no longer going to be acceptable in the military?
Well, first, Tony, thanks to you for standing with me during this long, almost a year. Me and you talked almost monthly on this show, fighting back against the lawless Biden administration, and basically doing the work of a dictator. They were just kind of changing everything the way that they wanted it, whether it be forgiving student loans, which the Supreme Court said you can't do it, and they turned around and kept doing it. And then, of course, the abortion. When Roe Wade went down and kicked everything back to the states for abortion, they were just looking for any way possible to do abortions and pay for abortion in this country. One was the VA, in which I'm still fighting back on that one. We'd never done abortions in the VA, but this where they were paying for military personnel to fly anywhere they wanted to go on the taxpayer's dime for an abortion was absolutely against the Hyde Amendment. It was against anything that the American people had stood for and voted against. So fortunately, Pete Hegseth and I, we sat down and talked about it, before the confirmation. He was totally with me even before he even thought he was going to be the SecDef. So a lot of people on board with this. I want to thank President Trump for doing this very early. Helping the American taxpayers really understand that this was not a law. This was just done by a dictator in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that just absolutely just told the American taxpayer, we're going to do this no matter what you want.
Coach, I have to say that this is one of those examples where a lone voice kind of crying in the wilderness can make a difference over time. I know there's a lot of people making kind of victory laps on this now, but the track was pretty empty when it came time to stand for this. I mean, many times you're down there on the Senate floor, and you actually had to go against some of your Republican colleagues. So first off, I want to thank you for taking a principled stand for the sanctity of human life and for the taxpayers who have historically not been forced to pay for abortion. But again, I think it's an example of when something is right and you believe in it, you should take a stand for it.
Well, you're exactly right. And nobody had ever had holds like that for that long. I held up every promotion in the Pentagon, and I was enemy number one. Now, I got, I had death threats and things like that. But what got me at the end of the day, you'd think as Republicans, you come together on this issue and you stand behind and say, listen, we're going to stand beside our fellow senator. And I had them coming after me. As you just said, I was on the Senate floor one night till 2 a.m. fighting back against several of our senators that were basically after me. And at the end of the day, the reason I dropped the holds was because Schumer had enough senators on the Republican side to go around me, to change a rule in the Senate to where we couldn't have a hold on any promotion in the military. And so at the end of the day, I had to get out of it and give it up. I hated to do it, but they were going to do it anyway without my approval. I just hated that Republicans sided with the Democrats on an abortion issue. That is dead wrong.
But sometimes you regroup for another day. And by bringing attention to this issue and being willing to fight on this issue, you have now seen it resolved with a new administration coming in. We just have about 45 seconds left, Senator Tuberville. What else do you hope to see coming out of the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth?
Well, I think you've already seen all the DEI woke nonsense that's been kicked out of the military. I want to get back to training our war fighters. And I think that's one thing that Pete and I really agreed on. And me being in education, I saw what they were doing in a lot of our bases and the training of our young people, they weren't training warfighters. They were indoctrinating them into a military that wasn't ready to fight. And so we're putting more emphasis and a more amount of time that they're learning to shoot. They're jumping out of helicopters, planes, learning how to protect themselves and learning how to protect the American people. That's what our military is about. It's not about woke indoctrination.
Well, and it's about time they get back to that business. Coach Tuberville, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony. God bless you.